English translation 107th contact, Saturday, 20th May, 1978, 1450 HRs.
Human child girl, how happy I am to finally see you again. It has indeed been ages. And how are you, girl? You seem to be as good as new. You too, playa. You look like you were cast from a mold.
You have changed in no wise. I feel excellent and am also very happy to see you again.
It is also a joy for me. My sister is right. You have not changed in any form, if I refrain from your beard.
Do you not like it?
Oh yes, you look magnificent with it. You look exactly like in previous times, only your facial hair must be a little longer. But then, you are your own likeness from that time, when you still—
Pella, you should not mention that name.
Forgive me, but this exact likeness tempted me to it and made me careless.
All right, children, do not argue about it. But tell me, is Pill something like a pet name?
Sure.
Ah, I find it good. But now a question, Sim Yase. Have you actually overcome everything well, and does no damage remain for you?
I have no recollection of the time between my collapse and my reawakening on Era. Only through Quetzal and Father have I found out everything. It was very bad, but now all is well again. It is just that I will never come back into the center again, so in the future you must, unfortunately, drive very far again before we can meet.
I understand, and thus I am also not angry at you. I am just very sorry that I could not prevent the events at that time. But it will certainly be a lesson to all that no one makes such a blunder again.
Sure, but assure Jacobus that I preserve no discord against him regarding his wrong action. I know from Quetzal that it has hit him hard, and that henceforth he will no longer act thoughtlessly in such a form.
The elf will be tremendously happy about that. Probably also an entire truckload of worries will fall from his heart.
He should not think too much about the incident. The same could have also happened to all others. It is important, however, that in the future such dangers are no longer provoked for us.
Surely no one will do that anymore.
Sure, certainly no one from your group.
What should that mean?
There are always very many curious outsiders, as well as new groups of newcomers, and these will not act in accordance with this, so we must be careful as always.
Whoever dares to do that, I will personally extend their mutton legs.
You mean well, but if you are not always watchful enough, then one will follow you to the contact locations again, like already in earlier times.
I will be quite careful. But tell me, girl, can we not fly over there to the center and take a little look at what everyone is doing over there?
Of course, see, we are there already.
Can I chat a little with those down there using my radio device?
Sure, just connect your device. But please, I would not like to transmit your relevant conversation later.
You also do not have to do that, girl. It already suffices if I can chat a little with those down there. They will be tremendously surprised. Hello, Miranos Fime.
Your friends down there are enjoying this. See, they are all looking up at us.
Yes, can they see us then?
No, their effort is in vain, for the ship is shielded.
Can you not let it become visible for a few seconds?
Unfortunately, no. You know that I am not allowed to do that.
I know, but later, will it be possible for you to give such a small night demonstration once again?
You know what was reported to you by Quetzal.
Of course, but I also was not thinking of a large-scale demonstration, but only just that it might be like before, when you released some lightworks in the sky every now and then for my friends.
For that I can give you my word. That is possible for me. But you must let me determine the times for that.
Of course, I also do not want to make any rules for you. But now I have a question. Is it really so that your sister always has to be with you during the next few years?
No, I will only accompany Simyase for about 2 months, for her healing has turned out much better than what was assumed by us.
Too bad. I mean that you will only come to the contacts for this short time, for you are rarely seen enough.
You will still see her often.
I already know your concepts of time only too well. But tell me, do you two know something about the fact that at 19, Wave0 on the 6th of May, at only about 1,000 meters of altitude and directly under the cloud bank, a beam ship or something similar was departing over our center. We observed an object at that time, and it seemed to me as if someone had greeted me from the ship. But I had my head just so full that I cannot really say whether that was indeed the case, or whether I succumbed to an illusion.
You did not succumb to an illusion because Minara and I were actually here at that time and also greeted you.
But girl, it was still a bright and sunny day, and you could be seen extremely well. How does that make sense with the fact that you otherwise guard yourself from being seen? That is not logical.
It was thoughtless of us, and Quetzal also reprimanded us for it, but it was my wish that you should see that we have not forgotten you all, especially not you. Unfortunately, already for a long time, Quetzal could no longer be granted leave, and neither could all the others. The reason for this is that all were in full and constant effort in order to remove the intelligences of Giza, who desperately made all attempts to escape us. Thus, the whole undertaking took a long time, and only on the 17th, so 4 days ago, could the last ones be captured by Quetzal and his assistants. So he is now deporting them to a very distant galaxy in the neighbor system, where they can do no more harm, for there they will have no technology and must rely on their hands if they want to continue to live. It was simply enough, because what these malicious ones have all undertaken in recent months, in order to rid the world of you and destroy everything, was just too much.
I thought so too. But could not these heinous ones have already been deported before?
It was not our right to do that, for we have to respect the will of a life form, even if it is wrong or malicious. You know that, nevertheless. The fact that it could now come to this deportation, however, lay in a self-defense situation. The malicious and insidious attack on your residential building justified this tough course of action. But other things also recently justified this, namely, those that stand in connection with you and your group. As I have learned from Quetzal and Father, very unpleasant things have happened with you. Even malicious betrayal has been practiced, through which a lot of things change further and must be newly calculated and worked out and put back in the right order. Various ones of the group have also stepped aside, and it would be better for them if they would also remain outsiders in the future. In any case, they can no longer find a place in the core group. Thus, if they, in spite of everything, should come to you again, then they should belong to another outside group, which meets together once a year. Our internal reports also should not be handed over to them anymore, for all those who have become missing so far should no longer have access to the internal circle. Just as they have acted until now, they would also do this again at a later time, and this can neither burden our entire task nor your group again. In addition, there are still other serious and objectionable things. So, for example, that you have neglected your entire work to such an extent that you have not complied with a single one of your necessary teaching-related works, whereby everything becomes delayed again for many months. What you ever imagined with your neglect is very puzzling to me. This is a behavior of yours that is totally foreign to me. Sure, certain events of a rather unpleasant nature have afflicted you very much, and because of this, I feel much sorrow for you. But that you neglect your work in such a bad kind and wise, this has nothing to do with that. As Quetzal has reported to me, you simply cannot refrain from spending your capacity for work on manual outdoor activities, so on buildings, on the land, and everywhere else. I have already often explained to you, however, that these works are in no wise your concern. You should only do your work and should no longer interfere in other activities. From there, you should also make no argument that the others did not learn these works and therefore could not do them, for just as you had to learn everything, so also should and must they learn everything. Once you are no longer with them, they will have to get by without your help, and the fact that you cannot dwell among them forever, this is, indeed, very well known to you. Moreover, your time becomes more and more limited, and there is already the great danger that you will not be able to do your works anymore because you have already gotten into too much of a delay with this. It only remains for you to let your reason prevail at last and to do your work fully and completely. Break off everything that you have made for appointments and interviews and let yourself no longer be responsive to phone calls and uninvited visitors. In the future, refrain from giving further lectures that are not directly related with your teaching. Your so-called ufological interests should and must be taken over by others of the group. Also, in the future, the group members should no longer occupy you too much and should be happy if you are still able to do your work at all in a reasonable and useful measure. So the correspondence and your monthly writing should also no longer fall into your concern, except articles, etc., that you, in your opinion, think are important to include in the writing. And with this, in the future, you do not continue to take care of the interests of the manual activities. Quetzal and Father will strive in the coming days to analyze all group members and their deeper thoughts in detail, and to assess their abilities and values, about which you should remain silent, however. Otherwise, various ones might deliberately steer their thoughts in other directions and be able to deceive us therewith. For this reason, I also will not give you the report transmissions until after the next weekend, so that no breakdown occurs. For your part, however, I recommend to you that you now finally dedicate yourself to your work seriously and as at earlier times, and that you do not let yourself be kept from it any more. Should you not do this, however, then you force us into a self-defense action, which would mean in this case that we would have to break off all contacts with you. And to be sure, for so long until you remember your duty again, take up your work seriously again, and no longer let yourself be distracted by anything trivial.
Subsequent explanation at the request of Injana. At that time, the Playaran feared, because of Billy's extremely poor and precarious state of health, which was based on total overload and overwork, that he would no longer be able to fulfill his duties, as he was actually closer to death than to life.
I have already expected that. I am sorry, Sim Yase. It is really my fault. But do you think that it is right if I may not publish any contact reports anymore?
Those should also only be ones in which internal concerns are spoken of. But otherwise I must, unfortunately, insist on the fact that everything is carried out in such a form as Quetzal has explained to you. This is all a joint decision, which I also must respect and cannot go around. But now, as things continue to start themselves in the future, Father and Quetzal have to decide this. And since, despite several complaints of your internal group matters, no considerable changes have appeared, and several group members do not strive for everything in the proposed and advised form, Father and Quetzal are, in accordance with the assessment, working out advice in the form of a plan, according to which every single group member should be instructed in certain works. And this time, unfortunately, it must be such that if a member does not consider this advice in an authoritative form and does not act accordingly, then this one is to be immediately excluded from the group without pardon, and to be sure without any possibility of a return. Already for too long, the whole mission has been endangered in a rather negligent and reckless manner, and has been called into question, as if we could only continue to watch idly. Already for a long time, everything should have been organized in such a manner that it all runs in good measure and progresses without any major breakdowns. Unfortunately, we had to recognize that still in no wise can the forms of the laws and recommendations, which are valid with us, be brought to application in the group. We have prepared for you the simplest rules to follow, which were tailored to your standards, but this work was for nothing. Therefore, it only remains that a format is prepared, which is determinative and which must be followed accordingly, as this is the case with you in certain institutions. There is no other possibility, unfortunately. Only such an order can still bring about a useful success. Otherwise, various ones will always be of the opinion that their services are dependent on praise and that they would not have to exert and trouble themselves if no praise will be dispensed to them. Expressing praise, however, is dangerous and only justified in quite special cases with extraordinary and highest achievements. On the one hand, expressing praise produces hatred and discord and strife, for through this one or another presumes himself to be cheated. On the other hand, expressing praise is a very childish thing, which is in no wise fitting for adults. A service should never be made dependent on expressions of praise, but should come from one's own and well-recognized sense of duty. Whoever is not able to recognize this yet, however, is still very much caught up in worldly and material values and also thinks selfishly, which also leads then to the fact that these human beings want to take up very much for themselves alone, and they become of the crazy opinion that if they just do not get something expected for their time, and in accordance with their will, then they are discriminated against, and they believe that one devotes oneself to them too little. With some in your group, it is still the case that with them, thoughts are released, which are of a very bad nature. So this happens when, on our part, we devote ourselves to a group member in particular and have to openly describe the existing facts and criticize this one under certain circumstances. So it happens, as I, unfortunately, had to find out yesterday on the basis of various recordings that it is untruthfully alleged that you would have written certain contact reports from yourself and according to your sense. These, however, are malicious interpretations that equal a lie and that are of a very treacherous nature and that apply very specifically to Olga and Claire. This testifies to the fact that their form of thinking is very immature and uncertain, which is why they should find no further access to the internal group. And neither should all those who separated themselves from the group maliciously. They all form too great of a danger in their uncertainty and instability, and over again they would bring on new dangers. They are still simply too immature and caught up in worldly things for us to dare to decide to continue to give them a chance. They were all oriented about what the whole undertaking is all about and what goals have to be reached. But they have disgracefully abused our trust in the fact that they were initiated by you into our plans and into the value of all things, which they would also continue to do again and again.
Do you really think that they should no longer be given a chance? Is that not a bit harsh?
This is now the final decision, and it is not to be changed anymore. All things must now finally proceed in the calculated form. Otherwise, everything will collapse in less than a year. The plans and regulations are being prepared by Father and Ketzel, and these must then also be followed. If this does not happen, then we will turn away from you permanently. For a failure to comply would have as a consequence that everything falls at some other time into those terrible formations, as this already happened at earlier times. But this would also mean that we would no longer have opportunities of devoting ourselves further to these concerns. We would then have to turn away permanently and leave you all to your fate if you all do not finally grow up and act and think in such a manner as adult human beings can do.
I was indeed very tremendously pleased, and I am still glad that you have come back again. But what you say does not please me at all. Although everything that you explain is very damn clear to me and I know that you are absolutely right. Nevertheless, I still wonder whether your action is justified. We are, after all, Earth humans who are still damn far behind.
Sure, with that, you have, indeed, seen things correctly, but yet you forget at the same time that we allowed you all to receive so much knowledge and also gave you all very precise rules of behavior in many concerns over and over again, which should have been followed by all of you, but which you did not do, that you might have learned so much from it that everything should be progressed in good measure without these continual and quite vicious breakdowns. Therefore, no other possibility is left for us now than that which I mentioned to you. And even this possibility should be limited, so you will only be given 7 months to finally pave the way for reason. If everything does not change during this time to what is planned and calculated in advance, then all contacts with you will be tacitly broken off and canceled for good, without ever resuming. This would mean that we would just have to leave you all to your fate, for you would then force us to it. Another opportunity of being able to come in contact with us some other time would then no longer exist.
That would be very damn bad, girl.
Sure, very especially for you. But then maybe I could persuade you to come and stay with us.
Ha, and my family, which I could not just abandon.
Sure, I also thought of them. They would have to go with you.
That would be acceptable. That would not be difficult for me. But you know, nevertheless, that some individuals of the group strive quite tremendously. So it would be unfair if they had to stagnate just because of some troublemakers. Somehow, there would also have to be a possibility for them to get away from here, right?
Sure, that would surely be possible, but they would have to undergo some hard courses, like also your family. But it should not come to that, as our task lies in other areas, namely here on the Earth. You do indeed know that.
Of course, but now, please explain the following to me. As you know, I always have to introduce new people using the center to the Sohar Center, and give them the necessary explanations, but I must also be available later if any further questions arise. Who should do this now if I should only do my work?
That belongs to part of your task, so no change is required in this regard. But this should not mean that you should bring users of the center there only because they do not want to be brought there by those responsible for it, to whom this task is assigned. You are not responsible for this and also should not do it. There is no reason why the others, Jacobus and your wife, should be left out. Sure, both are not capable of controlling their thoughts in the right manner like you are, which is why the users of the center can determine this, but still, it should not be your task because the two will still learn what is necessary. You should only make exceptions if one of the two is unavailable or if you have to give further explanations relating to the direct use of the center. But now, this should not mean that someone now continuously demands renewed explanations, etc., but you should still lose no words over this for the time being and should express nothing in this regard. First, Father and Quetzal had to have created the necessary clarifications. Otherwise, influences will arise in the thought processes of the individual group members who are deliberately alienated by the real motives. Only if you are silent will the guarantee be given that the analyses yield truthful results.
I understand that. For already several times you have let yourselves be deceived by thoughts that were totally different than those that were basically the actual wishes, etc. of the persons concerned. I am thinking in particular of Martin and Mara. But girl, now tell me something else. You are very susceptible to our swinging waves. But nevertheless, you told me once that you would move among us Earth humans every now and then. How does that make sense now? If you go crazy when you come into our vicinity, then how can it be that you yourselves still move among us?
That is very easy to explain. If we move among you Earth humans, then we use, as I have already explained to you before, a very small device to neutralize the swinging waves of the Earth humans. These devices, however, are very low performance and only hold energy for barely 32 minutes. Thus, it is not possible for us to use these devices for longer periods of time. We still are not so far along that our devices could fully guard or protect us.
But Asket already had such devices, which provided full and complete protection for many weeks and months. Why do you not make the same?
Their devices are designed completely differently and are absolutely unsuitable for our vibrations. Asket also cannot help us with this, and thus our scientists are dependent on developing their own devices that are coordinated to us, which are also based on an entirely different technology than the one that Asket had with herself.
Then nothing can be done there. But about how long will it still take before you have fully developed such devices?
It is a very lengthy process and can, therefore, take a very long time. Unfortunately, not only do purely technological processes have to be observed and evaluated with everything, but also psychological and consciousness-related ones, which makes everything even much more difficult. If everything was only of a purely technological matter, then it would be of insignificance.
I understand, and probably nothing can be done there. Well then, just not. Are you actually oriented about whether something has happened again recently in terms of flying objects, of which we know nothing?
About that, I can tell you some news which I found out a few days ago from Manara. I have indeed already been back here for some time longer than my sister. You are surely still able to remember that in autumn of last year, a flying object unknown to us appeared, which responded to none of our calls. To this day, we still have not been able to get a hold of it either, even though it still moves in the earthly space. So far, if we tried to get a hold of this object, it regularly escaped by retreating into a dimension unknown to us. This same object, in the course of last autumn, has now done some things that are incomprehensible to us, and we expect that the same or similar events will happen again. Thus, this flying object, with which it undoubtedly concerns a small spaceship, caused some devastation in Russia last autumn. Thus, this approximately 100-meter wide ship ventured in broad daylight over the Russian city of Petrozavodsk and shot down on the Earth with already well-developed laser cannons, whereby some damage was caused. Of course, the inhabitants of the city were moved into fear and fright through this, and everything did not exactly serve to produce a friendly disposition toward all those who come from outside of the Earth to this planet.
That is also understandable. But then, where was this exactly? Can you give me more details? Also about the time and the day?
It was on Tuesday, on the 20th of September, 1977, at 16:07 Argers. The object, no doubt a small spaceship, as I already said, came over the city of Petrozavodsk at Lake Onega, shot out of the clouds, paused for more than 11 minutes over the port area, and then, suddenly and for inexplicable reasons, set its laser cannons in function.
And you first learned of this in the last few days?
Yes, because we move in Russia only very rarely, for this land area falls under the control of another of our branch stations. Kitzel was indeed informed about this incident, but he concealed everything from us because he did not want to trouble us. But there was also no reason to enlighten us about such concerns before Kitzel himself had made an authoritative analysis of the events at that time. This was a very difficult and time-consuming process, which also only found its completion in recent weeks. But since the results were now available, Ketzel informed us about the matters, so I can pass on some data to you.
Very dear thanks, girl.
Plagia may not give further information about it.
All right, girl. I also do not want to know more.
Now it must also be enough for today. We must not exert Simyase too much. Expect Father and Ketzel in about 10 or 12 days. We have to go now.
As you wish. I also do not want it that the girl overexerts herself.
Thank you, you are like always. Look, we will set you down over there. No one is in the vicinity there.
That I can imagine, for the Sunday shooters are indeed shooting around there.
But it is only Saturday.
Of course, but there are still Sunday shooters. They only fire around on weekends. Is that not Elg over there?
Sure, it is a bit far from here, but you do have your means of transportation.
Of course, so do not worry. Here we are already. Well then, girls, goodbye, and quite kind regards to all.
Goodbye, and I very gladly pay everyone my greetings.
Farewell, my friend. It was very nice to see you again after so much time. Goodbye.
Goodbye and take care. It has also made me very happy, and I will preserve this joy.